All righty, we are live. Greetings from the fifth dimension, and welcome to Happy Dance's Guide to the Revolution. I'm happy to have you here, Anthony Fabrikant.
Hey, Jordan, thanks again for having me, man. I appreciate it.
My
Excited to be here.
My pleasure. It's cool to have you kind of engaging a little bit with me about the podcast that you watch and stuff. It's been fun. It's good to know some people are watching and enjoying, so it gives me a little added motivation and like excitement to kind of bring those people in and talk with them. So I'm excited.
That's awesome, man. I've definitely over the last few years, especially, have really kind of found myself listening and kind of experimenting to a lot of different podcasts.
Yeah.
Because it's such like, at first I thought it was kind of like a niche market where it was kind of like, it's cool like for commutes or like if you just like you're not feeling like an audiobook or music at the gym or something.
Yeah.
But then like I stumble upon like Joe Rogan's or like some of these other ones where like you're literally just you've got some like people that have attained some marquee of like success.
Yeah.
And what you're getting are like their insights on and their experiences. And with that, with that popularity, you get some guests that also bring some of that interesting insight as well. So like when it's, we've known each other for quite a while,
Yeah.
probably more than I can say, most people I still communicate with.
Yes.
But, I think that like, it's, so much I think of like, what I think exactly what you're trying to do is like that's the stuff what we need, man. Like these conversations need to happen. Like I get it's uncomfortable sometimes, but like people, having these conversations, like having those communication pathways allow dialogue to occur that may not otherwise. And when that happens, sometimes issues, questions, or things get raised that otherwise would just get swept under the rug, or people just don't even realize are happening. So like these conversations are awesome, man. Always been a big fan, so I think like it's awesome and happy to support it.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you're right. These conversations need to take place. It's like the consequences of them not taking place is a lot worse than the dangers of kind of saying what you think and exploring that a little bit of uncertainty and trying to come to common ground and common understanding and stuff. So totally worth the effort.
Yeah, I think like if we're not having these conversations, like, dude, like that's like almost like the premise of like where like situations like 1984 start. Like
Right.
you have like this expectation that people have that it's not a regulation, it's not something you're necessarily taught in school, but you almost have like this, and almost functions as oppression, like as an indirect form of oppression in the sense, because people, you have a sense where and it's a big year, right? Election year. So like, but then there's going to be, that's the biggest problem with polling in election is how many people don't vote. Like it is insane, the numbers. And the most common and easy and rationale is it's one vote. What's my vote going to do? My vote's not going to do anything. And like, of course, if you look at it like mathematically, one vote out of X number of millions, okay, one vote. But nonetheless, like that very thought, the fact that one person has that thought, the reality is X percent of a wider population have that same thought. And it's like anything with exponential growth, like it proliferates and to the situation where we almost have a voting crisis because we don't have enough people voting.
Yeah, and that mentality of like what I do doesn't matter bleeds into the rest of your life. And like if you let it, then like nothing matters, and it's easy to let nihilism take over and just be like nothing I can do can change anything. But it's like so not true, because if you look at history, like it's always somebody who did something that changed everything. So it's exciting. There's a lot hanging in the balance, I think, and it's fun to play with that balance and see which direction it's going to go, and maybe try to push it in a positive direction if we can, if we have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think one thing that like, so it's hard, like, when you like the like phrases like millennial or boomer or like Generation X, Generation Z, like it's hard to like really examine like what these generations of people do, until like they've been around for a few decades to kind of see like how it unfolds, how they react, like the things they go through.
Yeah.
And I think one of the coolest things about like, our generation as millennials is like, we've kind of been in this really like opportunistic position where like a lot of us are old enough to like know what it's like to dial up onto the internet, like know what it's like to have to listen to that obnoxiously annoying sound. Yeah, exactly. Right. To understand, like, if there's a phone call coming in, you're going to get disconnected from the internet,
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, we understand, but to have like that kind of like history, but at the same time be able to like pick up on technology as quick as we were. Like, we were kind of fortunate, like, to go to a public school like that was pretty well funded and be able to use computers like in the early 2000s, and kind of like, even if it was just typing and
Yeah.
to kind of get that comfortableness. It's crazy to think that, like, something I think about sometimes is like, cursive, like that was a thing, like in second grade, like early school,
Yeah.
like it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And now, like, you
Yeah.
can have chicken scratch and nobody will ever know if you know.
I can barely read. I can barely read cursive. Like, my mom sent me a birthday card at the end of April, and like she wrote a note in there written cursive. I could barely read it. I was like, what even is this? It's like, took me a second, Yeah, totally. Crazy. And imagine if we had the foresight to, instead of forcing ourselves to learn cursive, and instead we like learned how to code, or we learned like programming, or we learned like another language, where those skills are so much more valuable today than cursive. I mean, nobody even writes in cursive hardly,
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. It's like a niche thing. It's like so like I've been reading Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Was turned on to a recommendation from a friend, and like it's interesting, because like outlier, and it's like, its root is something that like significantly stands out, like, a statistical anomaly almost in most cases.
Right.
And the way he kind of looks at it and dissects it and talks about like opportunity, and like he kind of breaks down, he talks about like Silicon Valley, like especially like this, right? Like programming and stuff like Silicon Valley. He talks about like Bill Joy, Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, Steve Jobs. And like, it's crazy how like, although like these guys are, and rightfully so, like amazing effort, amazing accomplishments, innovation, work, put time in, but like it's crazy how like when you look at like the metadata, how much of it kind of falls into play, and how much like opportunity really, like, it's a combination of opportunity and hard work, or talent, and success. And to kind of see like that proliferation, it's so much of like, which kind of speaks to like the point, like one of the funding principles of like when you started this podcast, like about like leaving this world in a better place. It's not like what the world can do for us, what we can do for the world, right? So like one of the greatest things our forefathers did was be like, hey, like, this is what we think is good. We don't think it's going to work forever. We don't know if it's going to work forever. So here is the ability and power to make it work when things change. Because if there's one thing that's like consistent in life, is change. Like, things are going to always change. And sometimes it's the hardest thing is like trying to track that change and kind of hold ourselves accountable, which, in this age is harder than ever, when you take into away like media outlets are, social media, like anybody with an email can be on Twitter or Facebook. So like, and the problem is like Facebook is like is become like a scary source for like people's primary news and information outlet. And it's entirely at the discretion of how you populate that timeline. And like when we take that into play, like, yeah, like of course, like the founding principles of these of social media is to kind of foster community, connect people, and it's awesome, and it is. And like to be able to like FaceTime someone in Australia like that, or share a picture, is awesome. But at the same time, like, their fundamental purpose is to make money. And we years later we find that out, like with the cookies, and people are like, we have this conversation. If we start talking about like blow up mattresses, we open up Instagram, there's going to be 3 ads like popping up and showing that. And it's just like, you kind of realize that like we have, and it's up to us. Like we do force change. You look at like civil rights, you look at so many different things, and
Yeah.
it's up to us to be able to do that and have these conversations and to help, if we have these conversations, it gets people excited sometimes, maybe it doesn't. And, it kind of wants you to, kind of further that so that other people can kind of, share that perspective and hopefully find that common ground and try and, achieve that.
Yeah. And I think the first step in that, or at least one of the first steps, is imagination. And was kind of one of the foundational pieces of this podcast too, is like, imagine what it could be like, right? Like if we could make it however we wanted, what would it look like? Like really think about that, and like what would we change? What would we do differently? What structures are serving us? What structures aren't? And like, how can we change them? And what do we even want them to look like?
Yeah. And I think it's something that I think's come up on this pod a couple times is like the two-party system. And, like I could.
Oh, you don't like it? You don't like it?
No, I'm not a fan.
Everybody loved it.
Man. I mean, like, even, and like, it's like, and it's even been mentioned before too, like, not only has it like manifested, but like over time, it's only gotten worse because like, look at it centuries ago, the results of the election were, it wasn't, a campaign ticket. It was the person that got the most votes was president. The person that got the second most votes was VP. And so you almost had a bipartisan administration by default. And
Correct.
now, like, like an innocent, like, oh, well, let's just add, things like that, like those cookie crumbs, like those breadcrumbs, like they add up and snowball into something that like now it turns into like these phrases like too big to fail, which is a whole other thing because that's been completely proven false too. But in trickle down economics, there's so many things like that. It's amazing, that like rhetoric, how powerful rhetoric is even still, like even when we were just like in villages and people had to like, you would walk from village to village and like you didn't tend to see more than 50 miles outside of where you were born. Like the way people learn stories were people passing from town to town, singing and telling stories and communicating. And the effect of that is, rhetoric, like the audience, how you do it, the inflection, what you say. And, it's rhetoric is powerful. And, it's an interesting time because we see a lot of different rhetoric, especially in a campaign year.
Yeah.
It's something that I was talking about with my brother the other day, like, with how this pandemic's been, all the controversy, it's, I don't even want to get into some of the press briefings because, it's more of like Catch Me. It reminds me of Leo DiCaprio's movie, like Catch Me If You Can. Like, they're just trying to be 3 steps ahead and get out before they can get caught. And then it's the next administration's problem. And that's kind of like a cycle we've been in for like almost the last 30 years. One administration comes in, they make these changes, the next one comes in, and the first 4, it's almost like the first 2 years are just trying to undo everything the previous one did.
And they constantly just use the previous administration as like a scapegoat. At least I feel like Trump does anyway. I don't know. Maybe Obama did some of that too. I'm not really sure, but
it's true. Yeah. I mean, and like it's interesting, like there are things that like they both do, like it's Trump's tough. I mean, it's man, I was really hopeful. Like when the very first time, like I studied government, like in school, my first thought was like, we need like a third, like an independent needs to win, or like a third party candidate needs to win. And that will guarantee the change that we need or like will happen. Because like if that happens, it just flips the whole system upside down. And, but so like, no, I'm not a Trump fan. And I'm not like it, like I like on Twitter, like I try to check it out every now and again just to like stay in the loop. Yeah. And I have to mute it because like if it just pops up on my newsfeed, sometimes it's a little like, just You just expect better. You expect a little more. But, I did thought that like he could have like it was such a missed opportunity for him to like really affect like invoke change if he just ran as an independent. Like if he just because I think he could have did it. I think he still like that would have been like could have been that perfect storm where like enough of the Obama, the '08 Obama voters that didn't want to vote, or 2012, my bad. The Obama 2012 voters didn't want to vote for Hillary. They would have had like all those people that voted for Trump, like for the RNC that came from DNC, like they would have had that option as an independent. And I think like enough Republicans, even at that point, were just looking for something brash. I mean, you look like I don't want to compliment him at all, but like the rhetoric and the visual rhetoric of his like 2016 campaign it was genius. It was like, and they found the nerves, like the muscle nerve, and they just press. And they hit, I think it was like the rustic belt, especially they talk about like, and Michigan, like these, like the territories where like there's a lot of like manufacturing and like a lot of blue collar jobs. And, it's going to be interesting to see how it changes, because it sounds like those voters, especially that were like Obama in 2012 and then Trump in 16, the biggest like opportunity that a lot of people talk about is like, where are those voters going to go? Like, because I doubt that a lot of them are going to go to Biden. And then it seems like a lot of them, there's a lot of like regret, it sounds like, for some people that had voted for the Donald, but we'll see what happens. But
yeah, it's weird. Well, I guess we'll see, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like they're talking about. It's just the frustrating part is like the possibility of being in like a post-truth era, and I know like it's been mentioned and discussed, because that's gonna bring real problems, because if we can't hold like high-powered people accountable, or like like it's gonna just create a wider gap. And like that's one of my biggest concerns with this pandemic right now, right? Is like so many people are out of work, and so many like the tourism, like hotel industry gone. Like so many industries are just shot, and they'll it'll eventually come back in some way. Will it ever come back the same? Can we really say that? No, I think it would be a little naive to do that, but this is people that are working. Think about it, people that have the insurance. Like this could be even educationally. Think about all the people, like if you're in an inner city school, how are you doing that remotely? Like these teachers have hard enough times half the time just getting the kids in school, and like getting away from home and going to school can be an outlet for a lot of people. Like I know, like at times for me growing up, like going to school was like the best place I was that day. Like it's an opportunity to get away. And now like you're gonna see like it's gonna like that's what I kind of worry about, is like there's gonna be an educational gap between the haves and the have-nots that's only gonna grow, not only in education but in wealth. Like the middle class could almost like the way, because like the availability of resources, like people that are kind of that have been fortunate and very been able to take care of opportunities, whether it was them or generations before. Like you're quarantined, you don't have to go home, you go out to do anything, like you could. But there are people like people that are working now, like whether, and I'm not all the credit in the world to anyone that's in the hospital, like on the front lines in terms of this, like
totally.
I mean, it's amazing what you're doing, and I mean that. But a lot of the other jobs too that get forgotten are the people that are working at like Dollar Trees that are open, and like where you're gonna be exposed to like you're gonna be exposed to a lot of people that are even just that are just being negligent of some things, and it just risks your own exposure and you even sharing it to other people. So I mean, it's going to be interesting.
It's a really big, really complicated mess, and I do not envy any of the decision makers that have to kind of figure out what the balance is to strike here, because it is a tricky one. There are consequences for opening too early. There's consequences for opening too late. Nothing is going to be perfect. There's going to be consequences one way or the other, you know? And
Yeah.
I just hope that they try to do a good job when they let the data drive the decision making, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. It's not, like it's not, and people can't expect. I think people want there to be like a cookie cutter like format to open it up. So like, this is how we're gonna do it here. So this is we're gonna do it here and here and here. But like, that's just not the way it is. Like,
Yeah.
whether it's like the circumstances, the population, like places like LA or New York, like it's just like people. There's just so many people. Like it's just whereas like back where we grew up, like it's a lot easier because people are spaced out. Like so,
Yeah.
there's no perfect way, and it's tough because like that's what kills me about bailouts because so many like small businesses are done and will never come back that never did anything wrong other than be a small business.
Yeah.
And whereas there's these other major companies, and there's been a bunch of major big corporations that have been reported to have received like funding that was originally intended for small businesses. Now it's been reported that some of these bigger corporations have given the money back, but nonetheless, like it's just the economy is going to change. It's going to be different. It's going to be weird to see how it is because, and the small businesses like that really affects too, like the middle class especially, because that's where a lot of those are, like the people that are able to create their own business. And the way things are structured these days when it comes to like healthcare and stuff, like it almost like kind of like gears you to kind of go work for the man, put on your hat, go get those so you can have those benefits,
Yeah.
the illusion of security.
Totally.
The way like I know people like independent contractors, like it's like almost not worth being, it's not worth being a contractor or a freelancer unless you have accrued enough experience to be able to get enough a good be able to charge enough of an invoice to be able to afford your own insurance. Whereas like
Yeah.
if you take on like a salaried position, it's just like, oh, okay, it starts first day, no problem, that's easy. Like, yeah, it's deducted from your salary, but like
Yeah.
it's interesting, like the way the world is kind of like formulated, and we'll see how like litigation will change over time. I was a big Andrew Yang fan. I wanted to see like, I mean, like I didn't think he was like perfect. Like there were some things like, but I just thought like, not to drink the Kool-Aid, everybody always has a politician that they're like, like this guy, like her person, I think is, believes like just wants to be a good person. And I really thought a Yang and Tulsi Gabbard ticket would have been wild. And it's something I've been like, I hoped like that Rogan would bring up because I thought it would be a fascinating topic for them to discuss, because like automation is inevitable. I mean, you have an engineering background too, like, so like, and then you've worked your industry experience too. I mean, like automation, like that's what they try to do. Like, I've worked in quality assurance. A lot of QA people are engineers. That's not necessarily my background, but like that's some of the stuff like I would be doing on the day to day is just trying to automate like processes, systems. We're doing deviations assessments, CAPAs, root analysis and stuff. And automation is another one. Like, it's something that's been discussed for a long time. Like even like way back to like automatons, like back in like Europe forever ago. And it's just like you see how like over time like we get better. You see those bounds like Tesla, like they make a huge jump with the the cards, like over it makes sense. Every generation we see things evolve and take that next step. So like when it comes to automation, like like what are we gonna do? Like for people that having a warehouse job used to be like you're having a good you go work your hours, work overtime, like it's a hard job, but like more often than not you're able to buy a house, afford 2.5 kids, and probably send them both to like state schools or something. And like Now it's going to be, well, that's not even an option. Those jobs
Right.
are gone.
Yeah.
So, and like geez, like even years ago in the journalism industry, there have been outlets like newspaper outlets, big ones that have invested in like automated like articles that can be like, especially for sports, like where they have these softwares that you just input a box score and it'll just shoot out like an analysis based on like some stats and whatnot. There's some nuance I'm sure they try to fit into it to try and guesstimate like some stuff, but like we have to have a plan.
Yeah. And I understand why people are against it, right? Like nobody wants to be out of a job, right? But to me, it's like, why fight the inevitable? Like figure out how to adapt to it instead. Because like, does anybody really enjoy like doing that monotonous work over and over and over again? Like this baseball game, you got to like look at the stats, you got to write your story, and it's like it's the exact same as every other story. It's like not that unique, or like we're driving around at the factory, like moving boxes from place to place. It's like, I get it. Like we have to have purpose, right? But at a certain point, when things become so monotonous, it's like, is it really that valuable to like your individual like psyche and like your inner meaning to like be moving a box from place to place? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think like the thing that like there's that side of the coin, and then I think the other side too is just like when it comes down to it, like that decision's it's not going to even come down to us or the citizen. It's going to come down to those those four people in a board of directors meeting being like, okay, are we buying this software and investing? How many factories are we going to have fully automated by this point? Because the dollars and cents are going to make that sense.
Totally. And and it's not even them so much as like just the pure economics of it.
Exactly.
If they don't do it, but the competitor does, then they're shit out of luck.
Exactly. You got shareholders to keep happy, industry to keep, and so, and then like people say, well, that's where like capitalism comes into it. Like you almost can't fault them for it, in that sense where like, it's tough. It's tough.
And I've thought about like a political career before, and something when I've like reflected on it, when it comes to like jobs and job creation and keeping jobs in the community, I probably would fail in that category as a politician because it's just not like my priority. Like my priority is like, what's like the long-term vision here? Like, how do we take care of everybody? How do we take care of our planet? Like, how do we stay ahead of the curve on the things that are changing? And it's like, sometimes that means like your job doesn't make the cut, and that's a hard pill to swallow for people. And you won't get people's votes if you tell them that straight up,
No, absolutely. And it's, politics is, unfortunately, like politics isn't just as simple as having like, some sort of, your set of morals or ethics or standards or what you're trying to attain and improve. Like life gets in the way, like where you come into this old bureaucratic, like old boys club where like, this is how it was done. You can't like to do this, like, one of the things, and I'm sure like you've seen this, anyone that's been, out, in the world, like how crazy it is, like how many, how many great opportunities go to people just because they knew the right person or like a conversation, like so much of it is, and it's so crazy to think because those opportunities then eventually, obviously like you have to be able to take advantage of that, but like then that turns into like that one sliver of luck turns into like, a mastering or a master of the field or like ultimate, look at like, Dick Cheney. Like Dick Cheney was someone who like was incredibly opportunistic, had a great, political career in terms of like navigating and being behind the curtain. And, it was just, it's interesting to see how like life still finds that way. It's not so much of like, because we're led to believe like the cream will always rise to the top, but like that's not necessarily the case. Like, the strongest seed might not grow to its fullest potential if it's planted where there's no sun or or there's no minerals or nutrients in that soil or water to get there. So And that's when we talk about like trying to modify and work on our government in a way to make it work for it, but it's tough because it's like you said, right? Like, we try to make one big decision, but it's going to hurt someone, not intentionally, but like you're just,
Yeah,
the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Like
that's
that's
right. That's right. Uh, all right, so let's transition here a little bit. I want to talk about where we first met, laugh about a couple stories from that, and then transition into talking about sports and politics and how they're all tied together.
cool. Sounds good.
Do you remember where we first met?
Uh, Geez, I want to say like Pee Wee football.
Correct. So I was in 7th grade. This is 2002. And we played on the A team for the North Pocono Warriors, which now I guess they're the Junior Trojans or whatever. And we had Dan West as our head coach. Shout out Dan West. And Coach Mark. You remember Coach Mark? What's
Yeah.
the matter, Fabrikant? What's the matter? That guy was a character, man. He was a character. Unreal.
Oh man, it was
And
definitely a special group. It was an interesting group of people.
yeah, and that was the first year that I played football. I'm sure you probably played years prior to that, but that was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was good to get in. I've wanted to play football my whole life, and that was the first year my parents let me play. So that was cool. I got to do that. And then I remember like that Coach Mark guy. He was crazy. He was so crazy. And the one time we had a Saturday practice, and normally we didn't have Saturday practices, but we had one, I guess, because we weren't doing well or whatever. I'm not really sure why we had it, but we had a Saturday practice or weekend practice anyway. And dude, Coach Mark, like we lined up against each other, and he threw like mud in my face. Like I guess to like teach me a lesson about like people can play dirty, and you better be ready to like play dirty. But I was like, dude, what is wrong with you? I'm like 12, bro. Why are you throwing mud in my face? But
No, man. I mean, junior sports are one of those places where like it's it's a regularity where like you could go and have a day that's just stranger than fiction. Like where
yeah,
like people, sometimes people are coming like right from work, right? Or kids have been wound up in school all day and like just like weird stuff is gonna happen. Like you're gonna see some weird projections, like people are
yeah,
gonna be exercising some demons in some weird ways, like whether
yeah,
it's blowing the whistle 6 times, whether and oh man, like thinking back to those days, like with Dan and Mark, like
yeah,
it's like you want to talk about like grit, right? Like we were playing. I think we were playing 9-man ball at the time too, because like we didn't even have enough guys to like
correct.
run 11.
Yeah,
And so like everybody's playing two ways, everybody's playing like 3 or 4 different positions,
uh-huh.
and then we got these guys trying to keep us in shape and run a handful of plays the right way.
Yeah,
Football, man, like that must have been, it was 2002, then that was the second year I played. So I used to beg my dad, and it was the first year I think he was finally like, okay, like I'll let him play. And
yeah.
I played right up until pretty much until the house burned, and after that was pretty much that was when I decided I don't think I wasn't coming back. But
And did you play until?
like pretty much like through high school.
Yeah. Sure.
I had garnered like some interest to play, like as a walk on or tryout.
Yeah.
But like senior year, like so like a couple weeks after we had lost in the playoffs,
Yeah.
we had on Thanksgiving, like our family house had burned down. So
Jeez.
it kind of like for me, like when I made the decision to go to college, like it was like, all right, like let's go and like let's do all the things that like we were never like able to do like growing up. Like let's like if someone's like doing a book club, like go to these like clubs, or go check out like have like a social life, because a lot of like in high school I worked at Ferries, I worked at Pappy's, I worked at like most of the places that like are up there back home. And
Yeah.
so like when I went to school, like you know, playing with the guys that we played with, man, like it was hard for me to think about going and forming those same kind of relationships with like a bunch of strangers after like some of those experiences. So I was like, let's go to school, let's learn, let's not like drive ourselves crazy about football. And
Yeah, make that your sole focus. And so your team was pretty good. I mean, when you were a senior, and then even when you were like at your ninth grade team or whatever, you guys had a pretty good class. I remember. So what was it like to win more than like 3 games a year? That's must have been pretty cool, huh?
yeah, it was awesome, man. It was, and I think like, that speaks to it, right? Like, on those teams like that we played on, man, like we had, it was tough. I played on a lot of teams. I played on a few teams that didn't win any games, man. Like
Yeah.
you'd show up, like, and God bless the parents. Thank
Right.
my dad for making those drives, man. We're like on a Sunday, he's got to wake up at 8 o'clock after working 6 days, like 12
Yeah.
hours. He's got to wake up at like 6 o'clock, drive me 2 hours somewhere to go play a game. And, it, for us, like a lot of the guys on that team, like we grew up together, like we met in Pee Wee, and like we got our butts kicked, man. Like a lot of those losses I talk about, like we went through it together, and like it sucks, man. But it's like anything in life, like like if you want to get better, like you got to keep doing it. Like it's not so much like if you're gonna do. I think those losses really made like that last year, like those years so special because like like when we're down 20 points in the fourth quarter and these guys are just, having a great time and we're having a hard time, like even getting points,
Yeah.
it's us looking at each other being like, all right, like, let's try and do something. And then like, in the off season, it was the same guys pushing each other like, hey, like, let's go lift weights. Hey, what are you doing today? Let's go shoot basketball. Like just to, try and push those competitive juices and stuff. And, we grinded. We had some great athletes. And I think we really, we invested not so much just in ourselves, like with the weights, the conditioning, but like we really kind of invested in each other. Like we made
Yeah.
sure that like, if we weren't in for our reps, like we were going on the scout team and like we were pushing those guys to make sure they knew what they were doing, like, and not going to bully on a guy just because we could, but like just trying to like, hey, like, trying to help him get better. And for us, like it was, we wanted to try and do something that lasted, that wasn't just like our year, because we wanted because the guys under us were very talented too, to just, to kind of start something where everybody that came after was better. But it was awesome. It was rewarding. There were a lot of amazing nights, to kind of, get that. And, we still, every now and again, I still, some of my best friends are those guys. Joe Shear is one of my best friends. Josh is, they're still family, and, we still joke about it sometimes. I tell you, I got a Snapchat actually, because like last Memorial Day, we had a bachelor party for one of those guys.
Yeah.
And in the video are Shira and Prisbora doing one-on-ones in the middle of East Stroudsburg.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, I still talk to a lot of those guys, and, a lot of those things you learn in sports, like you can apply to life. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just like, if it is to be, it's up to me, like you got to make it happen. And whether you can make it in that moment or whether it's identifying how you can improve, put yourself in a position to get better, to be able to do it, whether it's lifting some weights, reading more, or film, or,
Yep.
just trying to be more aware of other things. It's like life. And, that's why, like, I think sports were big for me. Like I grew up in a single parent home, and it was a lot of very lean years. My dad was, he did an amazing job, but like football was a lot. Like football really helped me get through like losing my mom. Like it helped me like really feel like it really helped me find self-value at a young age. Like, and to be able to make those friends and to kind of eventually, to have all those losses and kind of like, because like when you're losing, you're always thinking like, why am I doing that? You're thinking like, why am I doing this? Like, am I not supposed to do this? Am I losing because I shouldn't be here?
Right. The self-doubt creeps in and starts infecting your brain with negative.
Yeah, exactly. And then like anything else in life, like when it came to that position where like we, we're just bulldozing people, like it was just like it was so rewarding, and it just felt like so earned, and just like it was obvious, it was objective, like you didn't take anything for granted, like you didn't really get we weren't really gonna get our heads were on a swivel because we were so used to getting those blindsided pancake blasts, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, it kind of shows like the reward. It shows like the reward of like patience, perseverance, and, the value that, some things, anything worth having, it might not be easy, and some things take time. And, so yeah, and sports are big for me. Might be my brother, like for them as well. And I think it's big for the country. I think that's a big thing everybody's clamoring for, right? Like we're talking about the NBA coming back, the NHL is continuing.
Please come back, NBA. Please come
back. Yeah. Man, hey, I'll tell you what. I was so happy. What was it, 2 weeks ago when the UFC they dropped those fights? Oh, that was a great night.
Awesome.
And they were some good fights too.
Hell yeah, it was.
So it's gonna be interesting. So like with that in mind, I'd just be curious, to see like, based on like, because I know we played in junior, I know we played in high school, and then I think like over the course of those years, we must have played so many probably pickup basketball games or something, So like I'd be curious to see like, what your thoughts are too on like sports and such.
Oh man, so I think it's ingrained in our biology first and foremost. I think the reason that we love them so much is because it's like in our DNA to love it, because mostly because we're built on this hunting platform, and most of these team sports are kind of reenacting the hunting aspect of like teamwork and focus and aiming at a target, So I think it's just like it's the reason we love it, and is kind of ingrained in us, And I think there's a lot to learn from it too, with respect to like balancing cooperation and competition, right? Because like you think sports, you think competition, but it's not just competition. I mean, everyone's cooperating, right? It's like you're cooperating with your team, but like you're cooperating with the other team because like you've agreed on the rules of the game. And like you've showed up all at the same time, and like your stands, their fans are over there, and your fans are over here, and the rules are like established. So there's like a lot of cooperation that goes into it, And I think similar things are in life, in politics, in business. Those same things have to be played out, And I think it also gives us a really good insight on like what we value in terms of equality, like specifically what we like, what we don't like, So, for example, the whole point of a sports game, well, maybe not the whole point, but like the end result is somebody wins the game, So that like right there is like not equality because one's a winner and one's a loser. You spend a whole season to determine like one winner of the whole season. So when it comes to things like equality of outcome, I think that we are not for those things as humans. Like we don't actually want that. What we want is like fairness and like equality of opportunity in terms of like the structure of the game. We don't like anybody cheating in the game. We don't like it when the rules don't make sense or the rules favor like one team over another. We don't like those things at all. It makes us furious, So I think there's a lot to learn there too, just with that piece. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure. I think, there's so many like things that like embedded in there too. Like when you talk about like cooperation versus competition, right? Like it almost like thinks about baseball especially, right? Like, there's these like with the Astros going on right now and the trash cans, like it's going on, right? Like, and it's the biggest thing in the world. And when baseball does come back, if you can put money on it, I will. The Astros batters will get hit by more pitches than any other team in the history of sports. But at the same time, like, the very concept, the very concept that like it took a whistleblower, and then like now, who I think was Mike Fiers, one of the pitchers that was on the rotation in those teams.
Yeah.
Who like now, like, not just the fact that like a whistleblower, like that word, like it just has such a negative connotation, and it's just like all this guy was trying to do was be like, hey, like, yeah, like I was on this team and I wanted to win, but like this is wrong. Like this is not how it's supposed to be, and like, we have this reaction, but at the same time, if he doesn't do that, nothing. Nobody would have said anything. We wouldn't have this. Like, it's one, like,
yeah,
it's one of those things where, like, if somebody doesn't say anything, then it must not be bad enough. But like, that's not the case.
Did you see the video and the coverage of Altuve hitting that walk-off home run to go to the World
remember when he hit it. I remember when he hit it in the series, and I was just like, I'm like, what? I thought it was weird, but like, and it's weird too because Altuve, especially in the way he's portrayed much like Jeter was, like in his heyday. Like this guy plays the game the right way. He's a grinder, plays every day, will do anything for the team. And now, like, you find out he's like one of the biggest proponents of it. Like, guy's been breaking batting, like MVP, like had great batting average, like.
Yeah. And whether they have physical proof or not about whether he was wearing a buzzer or not was to be determined. But I say the body language alone is enough to prove it for me. You just hit a walk-off home run to send your team to the World Series. The appropriate body language is this. It's victory pose, baby. You're ecstatic. You can't wait to hug your team. Like you're overjoyed. But he came in like this. Like he's hiding. He's hiding. He doesn't want that buzzer to come out.
Yeah.
He doesn't want that to happen. He's so full of shit. Unbelievable.
I think like the only thought I had, and I don't even know if I would call it rational, but like the only quote unquote rational thought I had was like that jersey better be signed and hanging in his house somewhere. And like he was just like, do not rip this jersey. Like. But then again, like that requires so much thought on someone else's site, and the fact that you have to go that far, like, even increases the unlikelihood of it.
Right.
It's tough. It's like, smells like a chicken, tastes like chicken, looks like chicken. More likely than not, it probably is chicken.
Yes. Yeah. So that's unfortunate. And see, that's what I mean. It's like when people cheat, it's like it hits us at the core because we know it's like not fair. Like everybody else was doing this and playing by the rules, and you cheated, and it like infuriates us,
Oh, it drives me nuts. That makes it just
this
emotion.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. It makes me think. So like we're talking about sports, and like we're talking about these things, and like I think one of the best things about sports is like we can talk about this. Like we're talking about this like from our past and how it connected us. We're talking about like how it's affected us. Like I was talking about how it affected me in my life. We're talking about it right now and how it's affecting us now and like what we think. But at the same time, like I'm also thinking like, oh, like taking advantage of the rules, other people are doing other things. And I'm sitting here thinking about like bank bailouts, right? Like thinking about like all these big corporations that we bail out because, well, they were too big to fail. And, this is a capitalistic country. But at the same time, they need to be bailed out. Meanwhile, like small companies and those that like maybe necessarily didn't do things the wrong way or didn't cheat, they're going to get, they're going to be roasted for that. Right. And like specifically what like bothers me about it, like, and like what makes more sense to it are regulations, right? Like regulations are rewritten, modified all the time. And like typically they tend to be influenced by the lobbyists that represent those corporations and such to try and bend those regulations and rules in that way. And like that stuff happens in sports too. Like look at like the stuff that's come out with the Patriots over the years. It's like, well, they were recording their signs and stuff. And it's like, okay, that takes time. You have to like pair the signs with what play was called in the film, takes some time. But nonetheless, like if you can decipher that and have that information on the sideline and know if they're calling a hot route for a go down the sidelines, and like that makes that corner's job a lot easier. Like I mean, so trying to when they talk about like it's like anything in life, right? Like rules or stuff like the laws and rules that we have. The reason we have them is because they have happened, like they've taken place. We don't usually make rules for things that haven't occurred.
Correct.
And usually, so like like if you get a hot coffee from McDonald's, it's going to say caution hot. Why is it going to say that? Because somebody got a coffee, it didn't say that, and then they sued McDonald's. So like those things incur those changes. And
Right.
I know it's a broad example, but like
Oh yeah.
that's kind of like those things. And it's interesting how like it ties into sports too. I love sports, but like like it can always segue into something else. And I know you've been talking a lot too about The Last Dance, which was awesome and completely enjoyed that. It was a good time. Was a little too young to watch Jordan growing up, but like it was cool to kind of see it from that perspective.
Yeah. And even though, I'm a couple years older than you, but I was still kind of too young to watch him for the most part, but he was still kind of like in our imaginations, like this hero figure. It's like Jordan,
Yeah.
Because he was like that. It's like larger than life. You reach the pinnacle, and it's kind of like if you look at it from like a tribal mentality, it's like the best hunter, the hero in your tribe. Like, of course, you're going to idolize them and think they're the coolest and want to be like them. It's like it's part of our it's part of our DNA. I think.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And like it's something that like when you talk about like tribalism, right? Like that's kind of how it is with sports, right? Like especially like with like football, like you're almost like born into like you almost don't have that. I mean, in the modern day, like yeah, like most people you can like whoever you like, but like you're almost born into like what you like. I was fortunate, like my dad wasn't a big sports guy. So like I kind of found sports on my own. And, so although like I was born in New York and like grew up in Northeast PA, like, I mean, there's a lot of diversity in terms of like fandom there. So like
Yeah.
I kind of like organically found my way to the Eagles and a bunch of the Philly teams. But like, so many, I know as an Eagles fan, one of the things that like that group, like the group of fans say is like, it's something, it's a legacy, like you're born with it. And then like, I think about that. And then I think about the fact that like, it's a business and that's the Eagles are, yeah, they're an organization, but like, that's a company. And like,
Yeah.
you are telling me that like the second you're born, you are alleged to a company. Like, and like obviously it's not like that's an oversimplification, but like to just think about that. And then like
Right.
obviously the insane profits.
It's a good point though, because like you probably picked the Eagles as your team. You might remember it, but you don't remember like maybe how old you were or like why you even picked them necessarily. But they're your team now, and like you can't just switch your team. Like even if you wanted to, like you can't just all of a sudden start rooting for the Redskins or whoever. It's like good luck. It's like your emotion
Backlash, yeah.
into that team. And it reminds me too of some of like the politic tribalism too. Like I heard somebody say once that I would vote for the devil himself if he ran as a Republican. And it's like somebody really said that, And it's like that's the time they're so entrenched, and it's like if your fandom is like so ignorant of like reality, then like what are you really doing? I don't know.
No, absolutely. And like, like I've been very fortunate over the last like 3-4 years. I've probably gotten to see like 5 or 6 Eagles games, like in different parts of the country. And like, like Eagles fans don't have the best reputation, and
No, they have the worst
reputation. Like rightfully so. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens, and but at the same time, it's like I use this example because I'm an Eagles fan, and I'm not one of those guys, so you kind of have to almost defend yourself sometimes. But like if the way I always describe it was like Penn State, right? You go to Penn State for a football game, there's like 150,000 people there for a game that weekend.
Yeah.
If 1% of those people are going to be looking to cause trouble, that's 1,500 people looking for trouble. Like, that's still a lot of people. So, like, you know, one of the things I've kind of like enjoyed is like meeting and interacting with other fans. And like, once they're like, for the most, you know, obviously there's some people that are just as blind as, you know, other teams, you know, those, that 1% is always going to be there.
Totally.
But it's kind of cool to like break that barrier and have those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. And that 1% there, they're the most vocal. So they're the most noticeable. So they overshadow the other 99% because they're so loud. You know, you think like, oh, all fans are belligerent, you know, or whatever word you want to use. And it's like, well, no, just these ones are, and you notice them more because the other ones are over there minding their own business, not saying anything, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I know it gets heated. Like, dude, the one time I got thrown through a table, I got tackled through a table by the groom at his own wedding over a Michael Jordan versus LeBron James debate. Like, that's how heated this shit gets. It gets out of control, man. Like, and like, I'm not gonna get into the whole story, throw him under the bus, but like, you know, he was drinking, obviously, you know, and like, he got like physical with me, and I was like, dude, don't be touching me. And then it got like heated, and he like literally attacked me at his own wedding. Like, people are like fanatics, and that's like where the word comes from, fan, right? It's like you're a fanatic.
Yeah.
Beyond any sort of like reasonable. There's no reason. It's just like, blah, you know, people get into it. It's crazy.
Yeah, and there's such a need for it, and like I think like it's like you said, like there's so many, like you could never really pinpoint it to like one reason or rationale because there's so many, but like one of them is definitely like it's an outlet, like it's a source of like entertainment. It's a way for like some people to probably exercise some demons over, you know, some trials or tribulations they're facing themselves, or like some way for them to even sometimes it's probably even helpful in terms of like visualizing success. And maybe that's part of why like we see the more successful teams tend to have more fans, because like obviously people want their teams that their fans up to win.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to kind of see that. And I mean, I know I can tell you there was this one instance, I'm not going too far into it, but like there was probably a group of like 30 or 40 of us that were getting together, hanging out. And then two people started talking about the Brady versus Belichick conversation, who made who. And the next 3 hours was just everybody watching these two yell at each other.
Oh, God.
So like, and they were both like, stood their ground, had valid points, but like they had conviction, and like, it's good. That stuff needs to happen. Like we were talking about having these conversations, like,
yeah.
Like I was with my brother the other day helping him move, and like we were talking about like sports and stuff, and like he and I especially, like if one of us like gets like really into or locked into like a take or a perception on something, the other one almost like by default or by muscle memory like slides into the chair opposite of them and plays devil advocate, whether it's me, whether it's him. And it's like totally like it's nothing more. It's like an exercise. It's like going out and like shooting the ball with each other. It's just like, well, what about this? Well, maybe. Well, you can't do it there. Like, and it's it's not so much to just like rag on the person, but it's just like to kind of like make sure like we're painting the picture. It's a little devil advocate. We love doing it, and like,
totally. And
it's good stimulation.
It's an important part of the process too, I think, because like if you have an idea, let's say, or an opinion or a stance, whatever you want to call it, like you have to be able to defend that, or else it's like it's not really yours. If it's just something you say, blanket, throw it out in the universe, and like you can't deal with any objections to it, then it's like you don't really mean that. You're just regurgitating something that you heard. But if I try to like, if you say Michael Jordan's the best and I say no, LeBron's the best, and we get into it and you start listing all the reasons why you think MJ is the best, blah, blah, blah. And I start listening. It's like, okay, well, at least we have our reasons for believing.
Yeah.
There's substance to it. There's depth to it. There's like reasonings behind it. And we need that.
No, we do. And like, it's funny. It makes me think of like another conversation that's come up on Rogan's podcast. Not to mention it again. I know you're a fan, so I know you'll know where I'm coming from.
Listen to him, yeah.
But like, he's spoken about how like, and it's done in other countries where like how we present our candidates. And I think like, because we only get micro shots, you're only going to get like a 1 minute bit here and there. And then
Yeah.
like the way like our debates are set up, like you need to just like, we expect people to describe their foreign policy in 90 seconds.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, like you couldn't describe what the chief of staff is expected to do in 90 seconds.
Right.
And he talked about like more like sounds like what they do in some other countries where like there's almost, and this speaks to like a bigger thing with like paid advertising, but like
Yeah.
where there's almost like segments where like there's just like an hour and it allows these candidates to just flesh out their ideas. And the problem is like you or I might actually sit down and listen to the video, but we're also, and that's also part of the American culture, I think, where it's like clickbait / like, what can I do to get a view? So it's hot, it's fast, it's takey. That's what people are pushing for. So like, I think that's part of the reason, like, Trump has, his following grew the way it did because people were just like, it's different, it's catchy. I don't want to have to look into it any more than I need to. Okay, I'm in.
Right.
And like that stuff, like if you look at it, like it directly combats like intellectualism because like you want to have as much information as possible to be able to assess different circumstances, perspectives, so that like the solution we come up with works, for the most people, can weather the most circumstances and such.
Right. Yeah, like kind of go back to your original point. Those guys argued about Belichick and Brady for 3 hours. Like we need to have our candidates like have space to like get into the details of things, and like, yeah, it's such a need.
Like I would have loved to have seen like Yang debate universal basic income with Biden, or like healthcare. Like
give him like 2 hours to do it. Give him plenty of time.
Yeah.
Nobody's got to run
2 hours.
Not on the clock. Like just say what you need to say, however you want to paint it, and like we'll make the decision. People watching will like we're smart enough to like look at a person and say, oh yeah, like he painted that pretty well, and like he took his time to like paint the story, and he gave some supporting details, and it wasn't just like bullshit that he couldn't defend when questioned.
Yeah, anybody can sound smart in a sentence. When it comes to like substantiating or like trying, professing your authenticity as to why you believe in it, like that stuff becomes pretty easy to sift out between the BS and what's real pretty quickly. Like you can tell through someone's inflection, through the, how they talk about things. Like, I think, people like to, paint the bleeding heart of a liberal, but at the same time, like, like that stuff needs to happen, man. Like I know like universal health care, like it's not I don't know how to do it. I think that there's a way to do it. I don't know how to do it, but I think that it, even on a fundamental level, like I think preventative care should be free. I think if you make preventative care free, I think, okay, like people are like, that's just physicals, like checkups and stuff. Like, what's that really going to do? What that's going to do is it's going to get that family that doesn't have health insurance, who would never go in for a checkup. Now they're going to go in for that checkup, and maybe that 6-year-old they're going to find that growing mass or a lymph node that's enlarged, or like, because preventative care, you ask anyone, like like Jerry Ferrara, big fan, guy was on Entourage, actor. He had like lost a lot of weight, life change, diet change. And what he talked about, many of these people that go through these big life changes in terms of like losing a lot of weight, getting their health back, or who identified an illness like stage 1 when it was early, like that's preventative care. That's people going in, getting their physical checkups, and like, okay, like I know that's only one part of the pickle, but like I think that has the potential to raise the baseline of the country's health. And like that's what we're looking for. I don't know, when it gets to the surgeries and stuff, like it gets complicated. I know people are worried about like, well, there's going to be people that bleed the system, and it's like, Well, maybe they, maybe they won't. There's going to be people that wouldn't even use the system, that people that are healthy enough in their own. So,
Right. Well, people already bleed the system in the other direction. Like you have the
yeah,
health insurance CEOs that are making tens of $1 millions a year. Are they bleeding the system? Like
yeah.
like give me a break here,
It's,
you know?
it's someone's always going to. It's
Yeah.
human nature. Like, there's a percentage, nobody knows what it is, but like, look at Adam and Eve. In that situation, 50% of the population was all it took. You know what I mean? Like, it took one individual made a decision, and then that was lost. And not to use that applied for everything, but like, that's just, that's, where the human condition comes into play. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, it's something a little more salacious, like, lust or greed, or whether it's like, trying to do the right thing, or like try and build something up.
Yeah.
It's tough, try and leave the world in a better place. There's so many things going on.
Yeah.
Pandemic, people, it's crazy times.
And that comes back to the sports thing too. It's like you're on this team, right? You can't control like what everybody else in your team is doing. Not really. I mean, you can kind of coach them up before the play, or like you can kind of work together in practice. Like you can only control what you're doing. You can't control what the other team's doing, but so you have to take full responsibility for your contribution to the goal, and if everybody did that, like Belichick's always saying, do your job. That he built his whole success on that phrase, and it's like, exactly. If everyone were to just do what they're supposed to do and do their best, like we'd probably be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, when we talk about like the NFL and like, the like the all-time champions, we're not like, yeah, we'll talk about players, but more often than not, we're talking about teams. And like, that's what that, represents. You look at that, like, it's not the best players that necessarily always win championships. It's the best teams. I mean, look at Marino, man. Like, that
Yeah.
was my biggest fear with Carson Wentz, man. Dude, when Wentz tore his ACL against the Rams 2 years ago, I was like, that was my fear, that this was going to be Marino. He was in year 2 as a start, like second year MVP candidate, like, great team, blows out his name like this. That was my fear. He was going to get close, and then because of the success of the team, they'd never be able to get the draft capital or whatever to be able to have that position. Like, thankfully that wasn't the case. But like, it's so much of it is opportunity, things falling into place. But like, it takes, like, that's, I mean, I think West. I don't know if I want to. I don't know if this is him. This might be someone else. But I'll give him the credit. But like, football is the great. It's been said to be like the greatest team sport in the world. Like, and that's because of that. Because you can have the best player on the team, best player on the field, and never win a game. Because it takes so much effort, and you have to be on the same page. And like, whether it's professionally, like, I know that's how we felt like back when we played. Like, we were all on the same page, and it's, yeah, man, like, the sense of community is so big. And like, I think that's why sports are so big when we talk about, and then like, even politics, like with the parties, like, it's almost like a comforting feeling knowing that, like, hey, like, I'm on their team and they're on my team. And like, they have, and whether that's the case or not, like, it's almost like a comfort food of sorts.
Totally. Yeah. There's comfort in the order of defining yourself as a fan of this specific team or this specific sport. Like, there's comfort in that for sure, and I want to back up a little bit here to like how much joy we get out of sports, so like you gave us a story before about your dad waking up at 6 a.m. to drive your ass to 2 hours to go to the game, and like you put all this effort in just to play a game, and like that's as a kid, it's like, think about like recess. Like, if you don't behave, you're not going to get any recess. It's like, oh shit, I better behave, and then like you fast forward to like as adults, like we still love it so much that we'll pay like big money just to watch. Like, we don't even get to play, but we'll pay, like, Super Bowl tickets go for like tens of thousands of dollars to be in a seat, And it's like, so you've worked however many hours. I mean, those people make pretty good money, so it's probably less hours for them. But you work all these hours just to sit in the seat and watch people play. That's how much it means to us, like in our core, And when your team scores, you have like an emotional reaction. Like, I mean, like you're an Eagles fan, you beat the friggin' Patriots, like in the Super Bowl. Like how, like talk about like that emotions of that day and that night and like what it was like,
Yeah. So like, just to like reiterate your point, man. I mean, like it's one of the best days of my life. Like
Right.
on it, like like just the fact that that's how it is. Like like the second they won, I was in Germany when they won the NFC Championship, like for work. So
Yeah.
like I'm watching the game. It's like 1 a.m. My boss is in the other room, and like Patrick Robinson picks off Case Keenum, takes it all, and while he's running it back to the field, I'm voicelessly screaming and soundlessly running around this apartment and just saying like, score. It's like 2 a.m. Meanwhile, I'm the scribe for a day of like week notes for like this department meeting.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I couldn't have been happier the next morning. Like it was amazing. But then like Super Bowl Sunday, man, like a couple good friends came down. We went down. We were in South Philly. I live in Manayunk. I've been here for the last few years. It's like on the outskirts of the city limits for anyone that's not too familiar. So we were in like South Street for the morning, just like pre-show, talking about the playoff run. Like everybody's just excited, waiting for the game. Like it's almost like a pep rally almost. Like you're just like waiting for it. But then like we wound up watching the game 2 blocks from City Hall with a bunch of friends. It was nice because like everybody had a seat, everybody could watch. There were plenty of refreshments and food, and like, oh, man, it was just such a great experience because like, not only like was it the Eagles, but like who it was with. Like I got to watch it with my brother, which like is something we talk about to this day. Like, and some of my best friends that are brothers, like we still talk about like that experience, like even whether it was like somebody, cheering on Nelson Aguilar for making, for having a great game and catching passes because, that was the one year that we were able to, enjoy that from him. And, like all these other, it was just like anytime it was a big play, like anywhere everybody's going nuts. And man, like, like I'll never forget like when they had the lead and then they scored and then it's coming down. Brady's got the ball. It's like 1:33 left and everybody's like, oh, they're going crazy. Like, we're going to go to City Hall. You coming? I'm like, no. Brady's got the ball. I'm going to wait. Like, I'm not leaving it until, I've seen this story. Yeah. I'm an Eagles fan, man. I've seen this happen way too many times.
Oh my God.
I've still got scars from Rondé Barber's pick 6 in the NFC title game off McNabb. I'll never forget that. So like the second, I'll never forget it. I took a Heineken out of the fridge. I put it in my back pocket, and the second that the clock hit 0, I was down I was in China. I was like in Chinatown, and dropped down the stoop, and I'm sprinting. The next thing you know, I'm sprinting up Broad. I'm right across from Tavern on Broad, in front of like, I can't even remember the name of the hotel right now. It's one of the fancy ones. And it rained a little bit that day. So I slipped, landed on my butt, and that can exploded. But I tell you what, I popped up faster than I ever did doing up downs in football. Took the can out, threw it into a recycling bin, and just kept going. And it was just, everybody's going, like, it was just pure euphoria. Like, everybody was just a celebration. Like, everybody, like, the things you saw, like, people are climbing poles and stuff. Like, I'm seeing people on top of cops' cars driving down Broadway. Like, it was just, everybody, it was such a cool experience. Like, we still talk about, and like the parade was awesome, but man, like that's something I'll tell my kids, if or when kids, grandkids, you know what I mean? Like,
and like to drive the point home about like how deep this is with our biology, like that was all real. Like you that wasn't like you thinking about celebrating. Like you were just like exploding with joy, and like the only thing we can compare it to is almost like if like you were in this tribe and this tribe was at war with this other tribe for like 6 months, and and then you finally defeat them in this like epic battle where you guys come out on top, and it's like, yes, like we are celebrating. Let's bust out the drinks. Let's eat. Let's be with each other. Let's just enjoy this moment because it doesn't come often. You know, that like complete like victory feeling that you get from that. You know, and you weren't even on the field. You're watching for TV. You know, and you're still like exploding with joy. It's amazing. It's so cool.
Yeah, it was. I mean, even like when I think it must have been like 2 years later when I finally saw like the Always Sunny in Philadelphia Super Bowl episode.
Yeah.
It's still like it takes anytime you see like that reference or anything, like it just takes you back. I mean, for like the whole like for the next year after that, like any day I was at the gym, like if I was having like a little day, if I thought about that day or like the fact the Eagles won the Super Bowl was like it brought like I could feel my lips start to curl a little. I'm just like, all right, like we're good. Like we've got this like second guess. Like we're good.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. And then like so you have that, right? We have that psychological, like we have that individual feeling and response, but like at the same time too, like there's no doubt in my mind that there was an economic response too. Like there's so like you feel like, you know, people are spending more money, people are happier, people are going out more. Like I feel like, you know, so like you have like which kind of
on the Super Bowl, drinks are on me. It's like that easy. It's like I'm burning it. We smoke them if you got them, baby. We're celebrating.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go. You know,
people are buying shirts, stickers. People are baby. I mean, that's a thing too, right? The Super Bowl babies. That's the thing they talk about every year.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a beautiful thing. And to this whole like act of throwing things like at a target is like so ingrained in our DNA. It's like unreal. And it might even be like one of the main things that helped us diverge from like our common ancestors with like chimpanzees, because chimpanzees are super strong, but they're strong. It's like, it's a lot of vertical strength, you know, but we have this like lateral strength that like we can throw like accurately at something. And it's not something we think about. It's like, it's just like, it's embodied, you know, like someone throws something and you just catch it. You just like, you just, it's not like you don't think, you just react.
Yeah, it makes me think of. So it was like a movie I liked growing up was the Ernie Davis story. It was called I think it was The Express, and so like when Ernie Davis, you know, like he was supposed to be the next Jim Brown, passed away from leukemia shortly after he was drafted into the NFL, but he was the first African American Heisman Trophy winner, and he attended Syracuse. Was like, and when he's visiting Syracuse, Jim Brown's there, and Jim Brown's like part of like the selling pitch, and like they're meeting at this field talking about like Syracuse, and Jim Brown tells him he's like he's got like a lacrosse stick, and like now like lacrosse is kind of a thing now. Like there's a professional lacrosse league. I think there's actually a lacrosse team at our high school now, and
Really?
like that wasn't there when we were there, and that was 10 years ago now, which is crazy to think. But Jim Brown, like in the, talks about how like, how like it was a war thing, like how like that sport, like with the sticks, and talks about like hand-eye coordination and trading, and like how like it wasn't just sports, like it was it was war, and like this is what they did to train for battle and stuff. So like, those types of stories and stuff, like I really think it just kind of reiterates what you're saying. And it's something that like as we've gotten older, it's one of the things I probably geek out more on than anything, is like all these factoids and all these things, and like where they come from, and like because there's a reason, like there's so much of like, I feel like to an extent we're almost programmed to like think that some things happen just because, like that's just the way it is, like that's just how it's been, that's how it is, like you don't need to think into that or anything. But at the same time, like even just our words, like they do, like there's a reason they come into play, like like manholes, right? So like why is a manhole in the shape that it is, the circular shape, like there's a reason for that. Like people might not realize that, but it is. And like the reason is because like you can't drop that circular top of a manhole into the hole. Correct. Whereas if it was a square or a rectangle, all you would have to do is turn it, anybody that's ever moved a couch,
Yeah.
you just rotate it, it'll drop right in. Whereas like a circle, it's like, it's not gonna go in. So
There's no way
something as simple as that.
And you can move them a little more easily because they can roll. But you get them out, you can kind of angle them and roll them, without having to drag this big hunk of steel. So yeah, there's thought goes into these things, right? Even if like our present is disconnected with like the decision that ultimately led to them, it's still serving us whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, I think it's and it's something that like we kind of like take for granted just because like it's been like not intentionally. I don't mean that in a bad way, but like it's always been there, and like I think that's part of why like when we have these conversations, like man, like that's why it's important, because like those are the types of things that the people that came before us did, our parents, our grandparents, like, so it's like, all right, like we got to do our stuff, like we got to like have our contribution, and maybe it isn't in like the Industrial Revolution's already happened, like so many of these things have already happened, but there's going to be more that come, and like having these conversations and sports and stuff, like it's going to help us get there. I mean, look at like, I think a thing that's going to happen with sports this year, it's already been like in the talks, but like virtual reality, like augmented reality is going to be coming into play. I don't know. Have you dabbled with any VR stuff quite yet? Have you had that experience?
A little bit. I've a friend of mine had the Oculus headset, and I played with that for a little while. And then I've done some different VR things at like arcades where they have kind of bigger units set up and you pay whatever couple dollars to play. So I've done some of those. It's wild. The possibilities are endless. I mean, it's pretty clear to me that the trajectory of it is that like this is just going to be the way that it is in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I think it must have been like 3 years ago. I was visiting my brother in LA, and I think he had the Oculus, and he was like, all right, he's like, you got to try this out. And I was like, all right, I mean, like, how cool is this really going to be? Like, I got to put on this headset, I got to have this strapped, I've got these meters, I'm like, I'm going to walk through this closet door. Like, I saw a video the other day, this guy was like doing this VR ledge walking, and then like as he got close to the ledge, he like thought he was gonna fall or whatever, and the dude coincidentally jumped into his television.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I saw this meme on Instagram. It was pretty funny. But like the second I put it on, it's so immersive, and you're in, and like you can like lose track of time, lose track of where you are, and that was my thought as well. It's like, well, this is inevitable. Like even just for video games, you're like,
right.
Like you could play Madden, sports, like so that and that's just for video games. Like sports, like to actually watch something, you would think would be even easier, because all you got to do in that sense is you don't have to account for the user necessarily doing anything to affect what they're watching. You just pretty much need like a camera to relay. You just need relays so that they can see it. Yeah. And like you can almost, what's the limit to that? Like from a profitability standpoint, they could charge whatever. Like, can you sell out? You know what I mean? Like, and at the same time, like with what we're going through now, like it's only like with COVID and social distancing, like it's almost like the perfect storm for that to proliferate. Like, and then like that industry, they've been talking about it for the last 10 years. Like it's coming, like that bubble's going to pop. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's been progressively going. And maybe this is going to be part of it. I mean, we have, books that have now become movies, like Ready Player One, where people are like,
Player One. That book was awesome. The movie was good too, but they're both really cool, I think. But
yeah, I hadn't had a chance to read the book yet. I did see the movie, which I thought was pretty cool. But like, like I think like that's what I thought when I was playing Fortnite. Like when I played Fortnite, I'm like, if you have this in VR, I'm like, the things that they've tried to do with their game, where they try to incorporate like things that are not like, because it's a survival game, right? But like they've tried to institute things that like where it's not just that game, like where you can race or do different things, like where they kind of make it this open world type thing, like that. And like inevitable, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that looks like. Could it necessarily look the way that they predict? Possibly, it very well could, but like, it'll be interesting. I just think like with VR, even traveling to other countries. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've gotten to go to like Germany and see some of the old like. It was a pure revelation the first time I was in a European church. I'm
Yeah.
not a very religious person. I totally respect it and
Yeah.
everything, but I mean, like, it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. Like, you just like, you're blown away that like, because it's man-made. Like, that man is capable of doing this, and it's just like
Right.
you just have that, like, you're in the presence of like something that's bigger than like you, like, and like
Exactly right.
it's like a euphoric experience. And like, yeah, like, I wonder how that's going to translate in VR, because like it's a great opportunity. Like, it will, like, it's inevitable that it'll become a cheap avenue to be able to see things, like, instead of traveling to them, because like that opportunity is going to be there, so it'll manifest. But like, it'll be interesting to see how like that mediation, what gets lost in translation.
Yeah, and I even saw with the COVID thing, like certain museums where you were able to go on virtual tours of those museums. Like, who would have thought that was possible 10 years ago or more? It's crazy.
Yeah, I would have laughed at you, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like the technology, the technological evolution that like we've gotten to kind of like definitely benefit from, like, the last 30 years has just been insane. Like, cell phones, like, you look at the timeline and growth of them, like from the iPhone to like what's out now. It's just insane, the capabilities.
Yeah.
Like, even Bluetooth, like Bluetooth can't, like, I think they started selling stuff for Bluetooth probably in like '04, and this is a guess, but like, I want to say like the early to mid 2000s, but like
Sounds about
nobody, what is it, I don't think they really knew what they had, right? So like Bluetooth kind of disappeared, and now Bluetooth's huge again, because
yeah.
they found out like we've almost like not repurposed it, but like we found out how to use it in a way that like works like wonderfully, like whether it's like your phone, like with its phone speakers or stuff. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's awesome. It's all about these conveniences that hopefully help us do things better.
Yeah. I want to back up to the sports thing because there's something else I have in my notes here that I think is really interesting. So remember I was talking about like the throwing like changed our evolution, like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like throwing,
Lateral.
but like combine that with like teamwork too, So like not only throwing as an individual, but like me and you and like four other guys going out and like throwing in a cooperative effort, and like either to defend or to attack like a prey animal, or and like that completely changed our whole evolution. We language might have developed like because of that process that we underwent.
Yeah.
And I think it's super interesting when I see like a little kid, like a 3-year-old boy, for example, like picking up rocks and throwing them. Like he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's like preparing himself for like the world of like throwing rocks, which was like, I don't know how many millions of years we lived life that way,
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely interesting, because like almost like, like if you go to Lake Strand, right, and you stop at that one corner where there's like the little pebble opening, like, I don't
Yeah.
know anyone that stopped there, and maybe more power to them, but like, and not toss a rock across the lake. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, it's
It's
almost like you're inherently inclined to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then what I think is even more interesting is like this concept of like aiming and throwing is, and like its importance to be accurate and to be precise is actually built in now to like our religious ideology, or our ethical structure. And like the word sin, like the word sin is actually like an archery term, comes from an archery term from Greek, hamartia, I think is the word, and it means like to miss the target, so it's like it translates to that too, because like there's lots of ways to miss the target. You could not know there's even a target. B, you could be not aiming at the target. C, you could be aiming in the opposite direction of the target. You could just be aiming poorly, But like,
Yeah.
so like that whole concept of like hitting the target is like built into that, and you can see it like in our religious ideas too, with like things like walking in Christ's footsteps, for example. It's like there's lots of ways you can walk, But like in those footsteps is like the precise, like this little narrow little window to walk through, you know, and it's like the saying, like the gate into heaven is narrow, you know. It's like, yes, exactly. You got to be very precise in all these things to do them correctly, you know. Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like I think what's particularly interesting, like when it comes to that topic, and it like especially when it comes to like sins or like whether you're accurate or inaccurate, like in relation to that, like
Yeah.
so much of it is interpretation, right? And something that it's something that I've actually kind of dug more into the last 6 months. Is probably I've attended a few more sermons and stuff on Sundays here and there, and trying to be objective. It's tough sometimes, just because sometimes it's hard to see past the human preaching and taking into account like how their opinions are influencing what they're saying and stuff. But at the same, so like something I've come to think, like the more I try to think a little literally about like historic things and like how they may have came to be, like this is not a literal example, but like history being like his story, how it breaks down,
Right.
and something that really kind of proliferated that kind of thought for me was when I read the Game of Thrones books, because man, like George, like it's a love-hate relationship for George Martin for me, because like I love the way he built that world and the way he wrote it and how like nuanced and how tight together it is, and how like all these things, like there's a reason like these things have these names, and like whether or not like you get to that point of finding them, and how stuff. So like when I think about that, like some like that type of like thought process, like phrases like God made you in his image, and like you think about that, and something I always thought about was like it didn't make sense to me that like in a planet so big, complicated, with so many different species, animals, like, and like things that are so great and excellent at what they do, for there to, and like, so the other side of the coin I think sometimes is this just our perception that we're the dominant force, or like are we, and that's, I know how dumb that might sound, but like
No.
like how is it that there's just one species, and then like you think like one species to like rule, quote unquote, rule them
One
all.
species to rule them all.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so I think, like, almost think of it literally. Like, what if, like, God isn't so much someone that's like this all-knowing, all-powerful being, or more like the OG, like the original, like the real McCoy, and was like the one of the first people that stood up and was like, well, this is how we should do it. And like, because when I think about it, like we as people, especially when it comes to like stories or even movies, like we get so impassioned and imaginative, like with these stories, and like sometimes we remember that like you and I can have an experience, and 10 years later we recite it and it could be completely different. And like for me it could be like the greatest experience of all time. For you to be like, yeah, I've had happy hours that were more fun than that. You know what I mean? Like that's so like the power of imagination, and how like things like can, like so I think about that stuff like sometimes, like like is this like how it was, or like is this just how we wanted it to be perceived to be? Like did we just let it get ahead of ourselves in that way? No, but it's interesting. Like I think like it's such a, and I respect it. It's just like I just it's weird for me. Like there's the phrase like everything happens for a reason. Like that's, I think some things do, because I think there are cause and effect. I think you can't, like, if you do something, like, more than likely, like, it's going to affect something else. But, like, there's just too many things that happen in this world for no reason for that to, like, like a tsunami in Eastern Europe, like, family pat, like, there's no reason for that. Like, they live there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Did you ever watch the Joe Rogan episode with Brett Weinstein, or it might have been his brother Eric Weinstein? where he talks about that idea of things happen for a reason from like a biological standpoint. Did you ever listen to that part? Or see that
No, I think I have it queued. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've
It's
seen
pretty
it.
cool the way he describes it. It's like that idea, right? So you take that as an idea of like things happen for a reason, right? And it's like, okay, so let's set aside the reality that that's probably not true, right? Like scientifically, things probably don't happen for a reason. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But like, let's just look at somebody who believes that and somebody who doesn't believe that, and like who works out better. Like who, if you iterate that over time, who's better off, you know? And
Yeah,
like they kind of use the example of like,
like
um,
pessimism versus optimism.
he uses a specific biological example of like porcupines being able to throw their quills, you know? So it's like if you believe porcupines can throw their quills and I don't, well, like, who's better off? And like the reality is porcupines can't throw their quills. They can't do it. It's like they don't do that. But like because you believe that they can, you're far less likely to be injured and killed by a porcupine, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
So it
yeah,
creates like this, like the people who believe that porcupines throw their quills and like embody that belief through action and giving porcupines their space and their distance, they don't die from porcupine injuries, you know? They're at least they're far less likely to die. So like the people who believe that things happen for a reason, they're like looking for the reason that
yeah,
things happen for. They're like more aware of like the new opportunities that present themselves when tragic things happen. You know, it's wild.
yeah. That's like the more you know, the more you don't know. It's like one of those like. It makes me think like. Oh man, it makes me think specifically of Okay, it makes me specifically think of something I read the other day in Gladwell's book.
Yeah.
And like he's talking about this study where it was specifically like they followed 12 families like for a few months, like went to appointments with them and everything. And what they found were like really like like between the 12 families, like you would think you would find like I don't know 10 different parenting styles or whatnot, but what they really found were two. They found and like how they tended to impact the kids and like where they tended to come from, and it tended to be like the wealthier families and the non-wealthier, like the less wealthier families.
Yeah.
And what you kind of found was that so like this specific example is like a doctor's appointment for like a 12-year-old going for like a checkup, and like on the car ride the kid in the wealthier family, his parents are asking him about his day, asking him like questions, trying to ask them like, hey, do you have any questions for the doctor? And the kid goes, oh, I'm not sure. And then they go, well, what about those bumps on your arm you mentioned the other day? And the kid goes, oh yeah. And then the kid makes that note that like, okay, like this is something I'm going to go. So when they go to the doctor's office, the doctor, like they have the interaction, and then the doctor asks him if he has any questions. Like doctor asks him like, oh, like how old are you? He's like, you're 10 years old, right? Like the age, and the kid goes, no. And the doctor double checks again. Then he sees, okay, so you'll be 10 in like 3 months. And the kid goes, yes. And he goes, okay, well, we round it up in that case. And Gladwell focuses on that. The kid like almost like asserts himself in that moment against, a 12-year-old is asserting like,
Yeah.
it's not, he's asserting himself against a physician, a person of power, an adult, like someone that like he should be respectful to and such, right?
Right.
And so then like the rest of the conversation goes, like they have the questions, the kid asks the questions, and then he has that banter with the physician over some bumps on his arm, and that's it. And then we have the example from the family in poverty
Yeah.
and the car ride. There's no like you don't have that conversation. It's the parents, the kids are more like independent in that. Like it's on them to kind of like find their interactions, like to fulfill their days and such. And
Right.
so like that kid doesn't, when they have those physician, like whatever the physician says, they tend to follow. They don't tend to question or such. And
Mm-hmm.
so he kind of highlights like, now it might look like it, and I had the same thought too. Like it looks like entitlement, like that you are entitled to be able to say that and speak to that. But at the same sense, what it really manifests is like that assertiveness and being comfortable enough to, being in a room with people maybe that you don't know and kind of, standing your ground. And
Yep.
like something, research tends to shows that like those little bubbles that we start when we're kids, like that separate each other, like they don't get smaller as we get older. They only get bigger.
Right.
And like that example made me like think of, well, that kid, that like the kid from the wealthier family, like just because like he knows he can say those things, like that's going to be the kid that asks for more responsibility at work or asks to do this. Like they're going to be the one that speaks up.
Right.
And it may not so much be that that person is, smarter or more qualified. It's just a matter of like that practical intelligence in a sense, where like they have that. And like that, kind of just, that's what that made me think of in terms of like, how it kind of translates. It's just like crazy how like, sometimes something that simple, can have that like cascading effect over time.
Yeah. It changes the whole trajectory of your life, basically. Like going from not being willing or not even knowing you can question authority or disagree with authority to being like, hey, like if someone says something you don't like tell them, like, I don't like that, or you're wrong, or like, engage in that conversation. And one can end up being a lawyer because he's been practicing and arguing with people his whole life from the time he was 6. And somebody else can go do something else, maybe not as argumentative and maybe not as high paying, whatever, and then it trickles down from there, like you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, man, like that's like, it's something that like, like you and I like now, like that's something like, okay, like that makes sense. Like we've seen it, we've experienced a bunch of things, like we get that, but like, man, like I wish like I knew that, like I had read that. Like I'm reading this book, I'm like, I wish I read this when I was like 12, like, because there's so many times, like I don't have many regrets because like I believe like, I've been fortunate, but like, the experiences and stuff we go through, like that helps us get to be who we are. Sometimes it's not always as fun as the other times, but like that's just, you can't, hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Sure.
So
Sure.
one of the only regrets I really had was like in high, like, with sports and in school, was that I think like I almost gave some people way too much like benefit of the doubt. Like this person, it's not just what's best for me, it's what's best for the team, like this and that. And like, so I never like would have thought like that I could have said like I disagreed or something. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
like, something like that example is just like, it's so interesting to see how like, just having that, that just a little bit of nugget can make such a big difference.
Yeah. And I'm kind of from like the opposite perspective, where it's like something happens and like people clearly don't agree, but like they don't say anything. And I'm like, why is nobody saying anything? I'm like, what's going on here? I'm like, because I've been always a disagreeable little bastard my whole life, but it served me, but it's also costed me in other situations too. But it's wild. Which kind of another topic I have in here that I want to touch is like, we have this like thing that we're told growing up, and it kind of reminds me of what you're saying here of like, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, and don't talk about sex, especially with your family or your friends. Or it's like, first of all, who are we supposed to talk about those things with then? If we're not talking about them with our friends and our family, like who is left to talk about those things with? And like two, like we wonder why these institutions like decay and become like so distant from what they could be or should be or ought to be, because we're not talking about them. And this goes back to the kind of the origin, the beginning of this conversation of like, these are important conversations that need to take place.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's funny. I mean, like, there are definitely, I definitely have some family friends where like, there's like some unspoken things that like, like we're not going to talk about. And I think that, and I can say like in those instances, it's specifically because like one of the people involved like definitely is just, it's not going to change no matter like what information. And it's just one of those things like, it's just going to be better for every, but like, I can definitely speak like to my like immediate, I mean, my immediate family's only like, it's me, my dad, and my 2 brothers. So like we have like a group chat, and it's usually Nate and myself that like really get into them.
Yeah.
But like Andrew loves to chime in, and like my dad will like, jump in every now and again. But like we like, that's, like man, like like for a bunch of Russians, you would think like, I mean, my mom was Italian, but like we fight like Italians. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you're getting substantiated. You're getting like, well, not only like are we asking you about your point of view, but we want you to tell us why you feel that way and how you got to that point. And
Right.
like we do that with the politics too. Like we talk about like, candidates. We Nate and I were talking about mail-in ballots the other day, and like how that mail-in ballots and USPS, like, man, that's going to be a big thing. Like, because like it looks like this administration is trying to defund it right now, and they're trying to find that way. And like, what are you going to do? Defund USPS, and then 6 months from now, we're going to blame them for why these ballots aren't working? Like, is anybody going to put these together? Is this not going to happen?
Yep.
Like, is this really going to happen? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're over here like, what in God? You have people writing op-eds in Texas about it, like trying to like literally oppress voters because like what is it? Like this year, especially so many over the last years, people moving from California to Texas or California to Nevada. Like, I think it's like 60,000 people a year average moving from California to Nevada. My brother is one of that number now. And then like California to Texas, which is funny because his first spot was Austin, but Austin's just not what it was when he wanted to move there, because now it's that. And like you have, and like in Texas, that's the thing, right? Like, which is a whole other thing that we probably couldn't get into. Like, but like, it's almost like it's on the bridge of becoming a blue state, because the cities now are so populated with like blue coming from these other states. So it's interesting, like, to see how these things go. So like we get into it, and like we talk about it
a lot closer because of it. Like everybody knows how everybody feels, and everybody like has had their opportunity to defend their ideas. And like everyone can be the judge of like everybody else, and like whether their ideas are valid or whatever, and it's like you're able to engage in that dialogue and learn from each other. If you're willing to at least accept where you might be wrong, everybody can learn a little bit from each other,
Yeah, there's a respect, right? Like, like, like it's okay to challenge what somebody like I guess like we never really talked about, but like it's okay to like challenge like that the belief, like just like the idea of it, but like like you don't get petty about it. Don't be personal. Like there's no need to like make someone feel inferior because you have a different idea, whether that's like you think the idea is better, or like there's no need for names and stuff, like it's just let the ideas stand for themselves.
Agreed. And that's something that I got interested in, because I was like getting in these like petty arguments on Facebook, especially when I don't do the podcast for a while. I realize like when I do the podcast, like I get like a really good outlet to like express myself and what I think, and then I don't feel like as inclined to like get drawn in bullshit arguments, But I was kind of reflecting on it, like how poor not everybody, but how poor a lot of people are at engaging with people online. It's like it gets very personal very quickly. People are very quick to like undermine you as an individual rather than like challenge your idea. Like the result to like name calling or like self-degrading, saying like, oh, well, I just must be an idiot then. And it's like, okay. So I did a little research because I was trying to learn more about this, and I watched this movie called 12 Angry Men, which is a classic. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all.
I'm familiar. I think they did like a recent rendition that came out pretty recent, like last couple of years, I think, right?
There is a remake. I don't know what year it's from. I thought it was from the late 90s, but I could be wrong on that. But the original is from like the 50s or something.
Yeah.
But it does a really good job of like showcasing like what types of logical arguments like work, like what actually convinces someone to change their own mind, And like after I watched it, I stumbled across a series of YouTube videos that like break down the do's and don'ts of arguments and debates. And like I took detailed notes on it and stuff. And like what I'm thinking about doing is like, well, I don't know. Like I don't really engage with people too much on my Facebook, but maybe if I like plan to do it more, maybe what I should do is like put together like rules of engagement and like post it with like on my profile. It's like, if we're going to talk about ideas, this is how we're going to do it. And if you break these rules, you're gonna get booted from this conversation because like there's no room for it. You know, it's unacceptable.
Yeah. So like I think a great so like not to continuously talk about my brother, but like so Nate is a Twitch streamer, right? So like
Yeah.
one of the biggest reasons Twitch is as big as it is because like obviously there's a subject matter that like viewers are interested in, like whether it's the individual or the game, but there's a direct chat to that person. So
Yeah.
like they have a comment box and everything. So like they each Twitch chat, there's moderators that like will kick or boot people, and like like it's exactly as you would think, man. It's that gotcha, that cancel culture, that like, well, why would you blah 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 blah, like people just trying to incite a reaction. And like his thought process is he tries to foster it. He tries to his moderators are good people he trusts, that he tries to manage that. But like
Yeah.
it's terrible, man. It's like, it makes me think of like third grade, like Halloween. It was like one of the only years I ever had a costume with a mask. And I was just like, I had the mask and like you did like the parade through the gym or whatever. And I just remember thinking like, like no one knows who I am. Like I could do whatever I mean, obviously like the teachers and kids, whatever, probably know, but like, like you have that illusion that's like, nobody knows who I am. Like I could say what I want. They're not going to know that was me. Like,
Right.
that's what I think of. And like, that's what it is, man. All you need is an email. An email doesn't have to have your name in it. An email could be whatever you make it. And you can make it for free. And that gets you a Facebook or a Twitter. And like, it's bad because like I said, I stopped looking at a lot of stuff in 2016 during that primary run. I did because like I tried to like get into the mind of like a Trump supporter, like try to really like get like try and understand it. And like
Sure.
I would go to like these rally pages and look in the comments and just be like, what am I looking at? Like this is literally like I've been in mosh pits that were more, courtesy than that. You know what I mean? Like I've seen like I've been, you know what I mean? Like it's just like rules of engagement. No, it's just like people are just trying to like whatever they have it's just like whether it's projecting, whether it's just like this inferiority complex that they have that they need to just try and like stand on the shoulders of someone else. Like Rogan talks about like the cancel culture, and that's how it is. Like it's like it's a thing that's popular and kind of in, but like you're trying to literally ruin somebody in that process. And it's like, how in any way is that a good thing? And
the types of things people say to each other, it's so mean. Like I've been cyberbullied on there before, like thinking I was going to have some sort of political dialogue and then just like being attacked, like made to feel like I'm not a man or I'm like weak or like they'll kick my ass and they'll fuck my girlfriend. And it's like, bro, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Dude. like chill out. Like what's your deal?
I've been on some of Nate's streams, and like when I'm on it, because like it's usually just him, and like when I'm on it, like sometimes like you'll see it and he'll try to be really quick about it, like with his eyes, so like it gets deleted or booted. But like people will come in the chat and they'll just be like, who the is this like, and just like expletive, just trying to like point out anything they don't like about me right on the screen. And like it's just I don't know, man. Like the stuff you hear, I like in like video game, like I mean, if you've played Xbox 360 online in the last 20 years, you get it, like because that's how it is on there. Like that's literally what it is. Like people are just like hoping you get like the worst diseases and stuff because of you beat them for a tenth of a second.
Right.
And
and I think it's just part of the problem here is there's like you're saying, it's too much. There's too much anonymity. Because like if you look at culture prior to like the internet, like your reputation was everything. Like if you were an asshole to like more than one person, then you got a reputation for being an asshole. But on the internet, you can be an asshole and like nobody even knows who you are, basically, or like, or you're so isolated in your like your bubble that like everybody in your bubble agrees with you, so you can just get away with being an asshole to all these other people, and people are just like, yeah, well, you're right, so we don't care if you're an asshole. And it's like, no, like it's not the way it should be. You know, we should really hold ourselves and each other accountable for like being courteous and polite and like debating the ideas rather than like attacking the person. It's like so messed up.
Yeah, and it's tough because when I because more often than not, usually like when you have like that kind of person that's there, like the unfortunate reality is that like there's more than likely a reason. Like they've almost probably been conditioned to kind of like be like that. Like
Yeah.
it's like, like that's like, they've either been taken advantage of enough times or, like that's just like that's how they have to survive. And
yeah.
It's tough. It's one of those things where like one of the things that like it's like something I try to like always be aware of. And I'm not perfect. Conversations with my brothers, sometimes they remind me that like, hey, like you can think of it from here, but like I try to be as mindful of like as many perspectives as possible, because like I only have my viewpoint. There's 100 different other viewpoints, and everybody's has different motives and reasons for why they do what they do. And more likely than not, sometimes it's just a matter of if we can bridge to kind of get to that understanding, like like in anything, whether it's in sports, politics, or whatever, like having that and being able to do it, like that's going to help us find that common ground, like find that because otherwise it's just going to be a never-ending cycle of getting worse, because you don't stay the same. You either get a little bit worse or a little bit better every day, right? So
that's right. Yeah, and I always feel like in such a pickle because like I kind of feel like it's I like burden myself with the responsibility of like reaching a consensus with people, and like finding common ground. But like some people like aren't interested in that. And it's like study like the art of war, like it tells you like don't engage in a battle that you can't win. Like it's just unwise to do that, So it's kind of like the serenity prayer, like have the wisdom to know the difference between the things you can and can't change, and find a way to just be like surrender to the things you can't change and just focus on yourself, because you're going to yield better results that way anyway.
Yeah, man, that was a tough lesson, because I'm much the same. Like I like whether I do agree or have a completely different like viewpoint, like I want that interaction to end with us like coming to like, okay, like whether or not we agree, it's like, okay, cool, like good talk, like that was chill, but like I've man, like I've lost friends over that, like where they just it's not the case for them, and and you learn that everybody communicates differently, but like exactly right. What can you control? What can't you control? Is there something you can do to influence whether it happens again? If not, jump to 3. It's outside of your control. Like just understand that. You have to let it go. It's tough, but
and also too, like trying to ask yourself, what's it worth to you? Is it worth like losing this friendship over? Is it even a friendship, or is this just someone that you know?
Exactly.
Do you even like them?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean like you don't like them, not friends with them, to just like attack them. That doesn't mean that. But it's also like don't exhaust yourself trying to change their mind or like get them to like you either, because it's like you're never going to get every single person to like you. It's just impossible.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what it is, right? Like, there's a difference between the journey the journey of 1,000 miles that begins with a single step, and the journey that's you trying to breathe water. One is going to just take time. The other one, it doesn't matter how much time.
Right.
And if someone figures that out, congratulations. But
fish have figured it out, I guess. But
yeah, touche.
You know what I mean. Brother, we're almost at 2 hours here, so let's wrap it up. Any last things for me, or anything else that you want to get into real quick, or?
Yeah, so I mean, I know I said this at the beginning, but I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to thank you for having me on, and for not only starting this but continuing to to pursue it, man. Like this is the hard time. Like this is the time where it's like it's only going. You're making it work, and like
Yeah.
I don't want you to think it's not going notice. These conversations need to happen. I love like you've had a lot of different conversations, like
Yeah.
even I think it was like E2 or 3 where it's like you're talking about like almost like the dimensions and stuff, and like
Yeah.
that stuff's wild, man. Like sometimes I think about that, I'm like, yo, like what if it's like literally only the stuff that I can physically like touch? Like, and I think about like how many things we use that we have a screen for. Like, what if those screens just go black and it's just like,
Yeah.
when you talk about like how it would look in a different dimension or stuff. Like, there's those conversations need to happen, and you know, I appreciate you letting me, babble on a little bit. I know I probably went on a couple
Oh,
rants here and
great.
there, but
Great.
you know, it's something it's something I've been looking forward to, and I appreciate it. I
It's my
guess
pleasure to be able to do this with people and kind of give them space to talk and share my own ideas. And truly, it's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to being able to continue it. So,
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I just wanted to, I think I reached out to, I think, I'm pretty sure,
yeah,
but with some of the house cleaning you mentioned in the last episode that I had listened to, and I just wanted to say, send you and your family the best. I know, like you said, we've known each other for a long time, and with that, we've kind of known each other like when we had to go through our own, trials and tribulations, and
right.
you've always been a real a stand-up guy, and
Yeah.
specifically like with Kelly and stuff, I wanted to make sure that I sent love and wishes to you guys and the family back home. It's tough times, but hopefully
Yep.
get better, some semblance of normalcy, and
Things are going to improve. As long as we keep at it, keep working at it, keep being optimistic, keep working hard. It's only one direction we can go. Forward.
onward and upward, right?
Right. All right, brother. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Good talking to you. Keep in
Anytime.
touch with me. All right.
Will do. Take care.
All right. Take care, brother.
Bye.
Bye.